The Dialed In Angling Podcast presented by OnX Fish, Fish USA, Ski-Doo, Runnings, Minnesota DNR, Strike Master, 13 Fishing, L&M Fleet Supply, and DeWalt. Well, welcome back to this week's podcast. I know the temperatures still have a lot of people thinking ice fishing. However, we're going to get into that time period where we've got to start putting the ice fishing gear away for the season and start thinking about summer. I know as we get towards fall, a lot of people think a lot about winterizing their boats and that sort of thing. Same thing can be said for the springtime. I know for me, putting all my ice fishing gear, I've already started that process of summerizing my gear. And really it entails for me is just making sure all of my batteries, my lithium batteries are charged, put away properly. Same can be said for machines. So in this week's podcast, at least a portion of the podcast, we're going to be talking about summerizing gear. I'm sitting here with Preston Cowan of Olson Power Equipment. We're sitting here in the office. Matter of fact, I'm bringing back the Ski-Doo expeditions that I used for Dialed In Angling this year. They're going to do exactly that. They're going to get them summarized, put away. That way, when we hit next fall and winter hits, we're ready to roll. Preston, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Tony.
Hey, summarizing is such a big deal. Putting away your snowmobiles, snow machines, all of your equipment, making sure that everything is in order. Nobody wants to run into problems when we come around next fall and you start breaking out your gear, whether it's for ice fishing or snowmobiling, and then you have problems. You and I both have probably had some growing pains as far as putting away gear that wasn't put away properly, and we've had some issues. I know for me, when it comes to snowmobiles, I've had it in the past, older machines where the last few trips of the season, I actually hauled them out on an open trailer rather than an enclosed trailer. And I had issues with rust where I went into my shed that fall, pulled back the cover, and I was just in shock at the amount of rust that was on that machine. And things like that. I mean, what are some things people can do to ensure that if they're putting their machines away, they're not going to encounter problems comes next fall?
Yeah, so you certainly touched on a big point right there, the rust issue, the moisture issue. One of the first things you want to do when summarizing your sled is washing it, getting it nice and clean, making sure all the moisture that was collected over the winter time is clean, free off the machine. You want to clean up areas like your brake system, your belt dust, all the grime that kind of collects throughout the season of use. Make sure that your sled's completely clean, ready to go into storage for the summer. And cleaning also involves drying as well. So giving your sled adequate time to dry it before you're putting it away.
What about fuel systems? I mean, I know, obviously all sleds are different. Older technology versus the new technology, 2-stroke versus 4-stroke. What are some fuel maintenance things you can do? Because I'm always concerned about that.
Yeah, certainly. Fuel stabilizer is always a big one. No matter the sled, no matter what fuel you've kind of ran through it throughout the winter, you always want to add some fuel stabilizer to it just to make sure that you're checking the boxes. It's cheap preventative maintenance right there by adding some fuel stabilizer before it sits for many months throughout summer.
And I always try to put a little bit of fuel stabilizer in and then get a little ride time in. This weekend was prime example. We had a little bit of snow, and so I treated the fuel. And, we rode up to the local bar restaurant for the meat raffle, had a burger, and then came home. And it's just like, it seems like if you can work some of that stabilizer through the carburetors or whatever, it just seems to help.
Yeah, certainly on the older carbureted machines, you definitely want to get some fuel through that system. The newer sleds, the fuel isn't sitting through in a carburetor float bowl per se, so it's not going to take a whole lot of fuel to run through the machine for it to work and do its job. So as long as you have a little bit of time, whether you're running it on a stand at home or you're going for a quick little ride to end the season, getting some of the fuel stabilizer worked in there is definitely a big thing. So
sure. I'm always concerned too, like when I put my snowmobiles away for the year, that I try to do it when we have a little bit of snow rather than running them through the gravel. And,
yep.
it's just always, it always seems nasty to me. Like, you kind of forget about your machines. You ride them for a few last times, and then all of a sudden they sit in the yard, and now they're full of mud and things like that. Now, how important is it to get that track off the ground? I mean, is that like a huge thing anymore, or what do you suggest?
It all depends on what track you have. A longer lugged track, like you see on a lot of the deep snow sleds, you definitely want to try to get that up off the ground because those lugs will kind of fold over under the weight of the snowmobile over the summer. The shorter lugs, they offer enough support to where it's not as crucial, but it's still always best practice to get that track off the ground. You can kind of put a 2x4, underneath in between the lugs of the track. So it's just sitting on the rails of the snowmobile on the 2x4. So that way those lugs are unsupported up off the ground. So
what about like belt systems or oil, things like that? Like what are some of the preventative maintenance things people can do in the spring now to get it summarized so you don't have to worry about it come fall, because those just aren't high on my priority list. And I'm not even thinking about that stuff generally. But, as you look forward, you don't want to have issues if we get an early snow next fall.
Yeah, certainly. So definitely the belt and the chain case, you always want to change your chain case oil yearly.
Okay.
So it's better to do it now in the springtime. That way, if there is moisture inside that system, it's out, it's clean. That bad oil isn't sitting in the snowmobile throughout the season or throughout the summer. So changing your chain case oil, and then also removing your belt from your clutches and doing an overall inspection on your clutches as well. At that same time, clean them if you can. And then having that belt sit off of your clutches. That way it's not, engaging the clutches. The faces of the clutches aren't getting moisture collected from the belt and vice versa. So having that belt off the machine during its storage time is definitely best practice.
And what about throughout the summer? Should I be starting my machine? Should I run it? I mean, is there battery? What are some of the things that I can do? I know sometimes when I'm out in the shed just doing projects, I look over at my snowmobile like, should I be doing something with that midsummer?
Yeah. So battery maintenance is definitely a big point. You want to try to, at least check your voltage every 3 months, and top up, make sure you're having at least 12 volts into that battery. Put it on a trickle charger. You don't necessarily have to leave it on the trickle charger the whole entire summer, just every 3 months checking it. That's kind of best practice for maintaining those batteries. And then as far as starting it goes, so it kind of depends on which style sled you have, whether you have a 2-stroke or a 4-stroke. The 2 strokes, at least on the Ski-Doo side of things with the E-Tech engines, is what's nice. They have a self-summarization feature to it. So there's a process that you can push on your controls of your handlebar or through your gauge, and the snowmobile will go into a self-summarization feature. It'll fog the engine itself. And that will, create, add the extra oil to the cylinders to help prevent the corrosion and inside the cylinders. And then at that point, your sled is summarized. So you don't need to start it up throughout the summer. It's got all the oil in there. It's self-fogged. So you're good to go until the fall time when it comes time to, get it ready for the winter again. 4-stroke side of things. Best practice is going to be to change the engine oil in the springtime before you put it away for the summer. Again, much like the chain case, you want to make sure that there's no moisture inside the oil, and that'll help, get rid of any sort of, contaminants that are within the oil. Make sure you have a good fresh engine ready to go come fall time. So
perfect. Anything else that people should be concerned with their machines that they may overlook or don't even think about? I know for me, it's like once that time frame of spring hits and I'm thinking boats and fishing, I've got that on the brain. Anything else you can suggest to avoid any sort of problems that you'd run into next fall?
Yeah, it's always going to be best to do any sort of maintenance inspection now. Don't let it sit over the summer because it may be too late and, things may deteriorate further come fall time. So do it now while it's, out in use and it's fresh on your mind. We're all, I guess, creatures of habit. We want to get to the next new exciting thing. Like you said, summer's here, we want to go, but just doing the complete inspection, looking at your track tension, your chain tension, inspecting your drive line, making sure that everything is ready to go for next fall it's best to check that off the list now. Don't wait till next fall.
Well, and I highly recommend, if you're going to summarize your machine and you're uncertain of how to do it properly, or you just want somebody to check out your machine and make sure that it's good to go, how can they get a hold of you here at Olson Power and Equipment? I know you're right off the freeway in North Branch. I drive by here all the time. What are some things people can do? I mean, is there a phone number they can call, a website?
Yep. Yeah. They can go to olsonpower.com. That's OLSON power.com, or give us a call at 651-674-4494. Speak with our service department. We run summarization specials on snowmobiles. We have a, summer maintenance plan. So it depends on, 2-stroke, 4-stroke snowmobile, just different pricing options. But we have complete packages to go through and do all the maintenance for you. So that way, hey, you want to get out on the boat, come drop your sled off here. We'll do all the work for you so you can get your boat ready to go for the summer. And then, come pick up your sled and just put it away for storage for the summer. So it's a nice, easy, off to the next thing. So stop on in.
Obviously, that's the best route. Have somebody look at it, making sure that you're doing it properly. Nothing worse than come fall and you pull your machine out and it's not running properly. It's rusted, the belt's shot. The best thing to do is take it to the experts. So Preston, thank you so much for your time. Make sure that you're winterizing your machines. Stay tuned. We got more dialed in angling after this.
There is nothing quite like Minnesota winter. Whether you want to try ice fishing, ice skating, or ice boating, make sure you know the risks and how to play safe on the ice. Measure ice thickness frequently and never go out alone. Always wear a life jacket or float coat and have ice picks readily accessible in case you fall through. Playing on the ice can be fun, but it's never 100% safe. Learn how you could play safe before you go out. Safety is always in season. A message from the Minnesota DNR.
OnX Fish is the best tool I have ever used for finding new lakes to target. Quickly filter lakes by species, then select trophy potential, high abundance, keeper potential, or high stocking effort to find the fish you are after in the size and the numbers you are trying to catch. Download from the App Store today to get research tools for the serious anglers and beginners alike, giving you the data to target the right lakes and the confidence to get there. Use tools like recent imagery, fishing hotspot data, or the best-in-class weather features that call out current wind, weather, barometer, moon phase, majors and minors, along with precip and more. OnX Fish is a phenomenal tool both on and off the water for discovering new fishing opportunities, many of which you'd never known existed. Download OnX Fish Midwest today, the app that is changing the game on ice and open water.
Runnings Home, Farm, and Outdoor stores are celebrating 78 years, serving 90 local communities across the Upper Midwest, the Northeast, and America's Heartland. Runnings has everything you and your family need for your home, on the farm, and in the outdoors. Lawn and garden, hardware, farm and ranch supplies, sporting goods, housewares, snacks, and everything for your pets. Go to runnings.com to find one of the 90 locations near you, or shop online anytime at runnings.com. Runnings, your home, farm, and outdoor store.
All right, for my next guest on this podcast about summarizing your ice fishing gear, I'd like to welcome John from Yeti Fish Houses. John Ziegler, thanks for coming on the podcast, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I was talking with Preston about winterizing your Skidoo, your snowmobile, putting that away. You're summarizing that for the summer, all of your winter items. Nothing worse than, I told a little story when I was with Preston about putting away snowmobiles, and this actually happened to me where, I went out in my shed that fall. We had kind of an early snow, I would say, like a November snow, and we were going to ride our snowmobiles down to my parents'. And I got out there and I couldn't believe how rusty my snowmobiles were. I had washed them down, but, I just kind of put them away, and, just from the salt and the grime and that sort of thing, left some salty residue on my snowmobiles. Totally bummed me out. As a sportsman, someone who, just loves to get after it, loves to take advantage of every season out there and making sure that your equipment is in optimal condition. I can't say enough things about putting things away in that optimal condition. That having said that, that's why we have you on the podcast. I want to talk about wheelhouses and wheelhouse gear, maybe some things that you've run into from other wheelhouse owners, things that you can recommend that people do right now to put their Yeti away so it makes sure that whether they're heading out on their next camping trip or next fall, winter, when they get their ice house ready, either for deer camp or actually hitting the ice, that thing is going to be working in optimal order. Let's start with like hydraulics and crankdown, because I know that's a problem area. That's an area where people run into issues all the time.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you there. The biggest thing with hydraulics coming off the ice, everybody's busy. Nobody's thinking about this stuff after every trip, but definitely when you're getting your unit ready for either storage or camping, hunting seasons, hydraulics are pretty critical. I would say, you definitely, if you have an older model with grease zerks on your wheel assemblies, you want to make sure you get those greased really well. Run the house up and down a series of times, make sure everything's moving correctly, as well as wheel bearings too. Now on our winch houses, you can reel that strap out of ways, wipe it down, get the salt, anything off of that, and then crank it back up and down a few times after you get that greased. Same goes for our tongue assembly up front. There are grease zerks on that. You want to make sure you get those greased, and you can run that tongue separately from the rest of the house. Run it again a series of times up and down, make sure everything's moving, working correctly. You want to get as much movement and things working correctly, so you don't have to worry about it for the next trip or even the next season. 7-way pins up front was another thing to check. Check for corrosion, spray those things down, make sure you get them lubed up so you're not running into electrical issues. That's a pain at the start of a trip if you ever run into that issue.
I always battle that 7-pin electrical connection. I for whatever reason, I'm always cleaning it. I use the what do they call that? The electrodiode stuff. I put that in there. But I'm not just battling it on my Yeti. I'm battling it on all my trailers. That always seems to be like my sticking point, my Achilles heel. Is there anything you could do? I mean, other than, a wire brush? I mean, what are some of the things you could do there? Because I am constantly battling that thing. What is there some preventative spray or something I can put on there?
The biggest thing I see is dielectric grease goes a long ways. If you can keep that moisture off those pins, keep the rust off it, the corrosion, put some dielectric grease in there. A lot of guys think that they can just throw a cover on this thing. That it builds moisture inside there. So if you are running a cover over any of your electrical pins, dip them in dielectric grease, get those pins covered, and then throw your cover on it. You should be good to go.
Okay. Oh man, I'm always battling that pin assembly. It seems like not just on the trailer side, on my truck side, I'm always cleaning it out.
Yes.
Issues with snow in the winter, and then of course salt and grime and road grime and that sort of thing. I got a question for you. My dad, for Christmas, I got one of the DeWalt grease guns, and love that thing. Like I just want to use, I want to use it as much as possible. So much better than the older system. Is there an issue with pumping too much grease into those things? I mean, kind of what should be my protocol as far as hitting those zerks?
Yeah, it's going to vary on the use of the trailer there, but I agree that DeWalt grease gun is great. We use those in the shop as well. But yeah, definitely when you're pumping that grease in, you can see it coming out on all the pivot points. So you can be aware of, not over greasing so you got grease dripping off or anything else. But once you start seeing it push that old grease out of those pivot points, you'll see it's discolored. It might be pushing a little bit of moisture out that was in there. But once you see that come out and you're seeing that nice color following it, you're good there.
Okay. All right. I'm conscious of that. Is there any zerks around, let's say the Yeti in particular, where you're like, hey, people always miss this one. Or is any come to mind?
In our older wheel assemblies, our steel wheel assemblies, basically 23 and older, there's grease zerks on the bottom sides of the wheel assembly, especially in the tandems. You got more grease zerks there, so you want to be able to crawl underneath there. There's grease holes underneath. You can feel them with your fingers. The zerk's right inside there. Those are pretty commonly missed points there. The rest of them are pretty visible. You can see them, but definitely get underneath there and take a look at the bottom side of the wheel assemblies. If you got something 24 or newer, that wheel assembly doesn't have any grease zerks. It's our new torsion axle. But you want to make sure you're hitting those wheel bearings for sure.
On that note, I love that new axle assembly is so nice. I used it all winter long. So much easier for putting your pins in, that you don't get the rust, the corrosion. I've had really good luck with that whole assembly now that I've been using it for a full season. I'll put my 2 cents in as far as washing underneath the wheel wells and just getting all that salt and grime out. It's so easy for that to build up into areas where you can't just hit with a pressure washer. There's a lot of times where I'll take my pins out, wash all that down, spray my pins down with like a little WD-40 or some grease, just getting that stuff off of there so that nothing's hidden behind the wheel wells. Because just by, spraying it like, let's say in a car wash bay or something, it seems like you sort of miss some of that stuff underneath there. What are some things that people can do to kind of clean some of those assemblies or clean, let's say the aluminum, for example, to get some of that oxide off there? I mean, what are your suggestions?
There's a lot of products out there for the aluminum. You get that oxide on there. We always recommend after trip spraying it down, but like I said earlier, people get busy. I'm notorious for it. But a quick basic home remedy, I guess, if you got white vinegar and water, you can wipe down that aluminum, get that white flaky oxidation off of there. It cleans up very easy. The wheel assemblies, like you said, Tony, if you can get down underneath those things, spray them out, wipe them down, that's probably the best route to go right there.
Another problematic area that I think people kind of overlook when they're spraying down their house is kind of that back half of that house, even the spray that gets up on top of the roof. It seems like you get all that spray on that back window and everything. It's just normal road spray. I try to get up as high as possible and just kind of spray down the corners and, kind of that drip cap up on top as well. Any other areas of the house where, people kind of overlook it and think, oh man, I run into issues, as you make it through the summer.
Yeah. The wheel well areas, the back half of the house, that takes a lot of abuse on roads here in Minnesota. I would definitely focus on those areas. Like you said, under the drip rail there, another place you can spray out quick. Over the winter months, you'll see you'll get a lot of cobwebs and stuff up there. So not a bad place to hit. And also up on the roof. I mean, if you're getting up that high and wiping down your roof rail, it's a good time to check your roof seal as well. And that goes for any recreational vehicle out there. If it's a camper or fish house, to check your roof seal at least once a year or twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. Just make sure you got good adhesion there and you don't have any cracks, anything up there.
In addition to, the exterior of the house, obviously another big one would be batteries, right? Maintaining your batteries. I think you and I were talking off air. One of the features that I love about my Yeti is having that solar panel on there for a couple reasons. There's lots of times where I love to stay mobile on the ice, especially with customers. I use my Yeti all winter long for, customers fishing out of, and we like to stay as mobile as possible. Throughout the last month and a half, I've been doing a lot of perch fishing, a lot of pan fishing. It seems like we drop down, we fish for a little bit, we pick up, we move, we drop down. So I don't always like firing up the generator all the time. So it's nice having that solar panel up there to sort of power the house for periods of time. Or if I don't want to have my generator on and I just want to kind of keep my batteries maintained. Now, as we get into summer, you know, I'm always worried about plugging in my house. I remember last year I kept on going out and plugging in my house, and I was like, man, the house is fully charged. I completely forgot I had a solar panel on there. My dad even, he was like, wow, this thing's always charged. Like, you know, and yeah, it's that solar panel. And now I think the new solar panel is a little bit bigger footprint, maybe. Can you talk a little bit about batteries, solar panels, you know, what people can do with summerizing or just maintaining those throughout the summer?
Yeah, solar panels they are great. It's a great way to not have to worry about plugging your house in. And we do that as well. We offer the 100-watt and 200-watt solar panels. Great way to have an onboard trickle charger that you don't really have to monitor at all. But definitely an area you want to hit cleaning up after winter too. You know, get anything off of those solar panels, let them sit outside, let them charge and keep the batteries charged. You know, they only get to a certain point, and once they hit a temperature rating, they basically act as a trickle charger. So your unit's ready to go whenever you are. You know, for the guys that don't use them much in the summertime, what I've seen is that they're pulling batteries. They're taking them out of there completely, so there is no load on them at all. But solar, definitely the way to go. You know, I don't get out on the ice as much as I'd like to, but we do home base on our lake here. My son's out there just about every night, so he'll run the heat out there. You know, 70 degrees. He'll leave at 10 o'clock at night, turn the heat down to 40 degrees, and the solar power will keep that house at 40 degrees all day long until he gets back out there. So he's not worrying about re-drilling holes or anything like that. But it is a great feature to have, pretty inexpensive to add that onto a build as well. But definitely it helps maintain those batteries. It helps keep everything going, and the unit's ready for you to go when you are.
Yeah, and I like the fact, like in my house, you know, with the Angler package, I've got that voltage meter kind of right by where my light switches are now. Having that up above versus down below, I know different model houses, they're in different areas, but having that right there is very convenient for me as a guide. Like I'm constantly checking on it. Like I said, leaning on my solar panels a lot when I'm out guiding and moving around, knowing that what my voltage is in that house. So, you know, say the next move will be like, all right, Pete, we better throw the generator on for a little while. You know, but you could run that house for a long period of time just on that solar power, and super neat. It's a great feature. It's also peace of mind. In addition to batteries, my house also has 2 furnaces, and I talked about this with Mike on past podcasts. I tell customers all the time, I love having 2 furnaces. In addition to the solar panel, like if something happened to your generator or you're on a fishing trip, you can power your house for a while. Having both furnaces like that is just peace of mind for me. If something should happen to one of the furnaces, I've got a backup furnace. I don't have to worry about it burning up a trip, or I got to head home or anything like that.
Yes, exactly. I would recommend those dual furnaces, and they're on separate thermostats, so you don't have to run them both at the same time if you don't need to.
No, just a great, yeah, exactly. Like peace of mind. I know when it warmed up, like we had that cold snap, but other than that, you know, we had a pretty mild winter. As far as burning through propane and stuff, it wasn't an issue like some years. Yeah, there was a lot of times where, you know, I just run my thermostats maybe even at different temperatures. When I was sleeping, like if I was sleeping in the back, I like a little cooler in the back. So I ran that a little cooler than the front. But while we're on, you know, the topic of furnaces, are there anything people should be aware of as far as storing their unit? You know, obviously, you know, a lot of people do, some camping trips, me included. My son and I have done a few trips where we've taken our Yeti out. We've done trips in southern Minnesota in April where we did some trout fishing, and we still needed to use our furnace at night. And then during the day, obviously, we needed our AC. But what are some things that people should know about storing their furnace for the summer, since, for the better part of the summer, you're probably not using it.
Yeah, definitely. But that is another area that's really overlooked. Over your ice fishing season, you got people in and out of those houses. There's dust. You got pets. There's pet hair down inside there. You want to make sure you lift up your jackknife sofas, get underneath there with a vacuum. Vacuum off the top side of the furnace. You can get into the heater core side, and even around back by the fan. Just get any of that dust or any particles, anything that might have came through during the fishing season. And again, if you're storing it and you're not using it over the winter, or over the summer, excuse me, get back in there before the ice season and vacuum it out again. Get it clean. You don't want to be kicking on the furnaces and you start smelling that, everything's getting hot. You're smelling that kind of burning scent. Basically, it's dust or pet hair or anything like that might be getting in there. But it's a good area to touch quick with a vacuum.
So I use my house, like I said, for camping. I also use it for ice fishing. We love staying in the Eddy. It's so nice. Like coming from a person that used to have a camper, especially an older style camper where I had the bottle jacks that I had to kind of level the house and get it really set up. It took a lot to set up my old camper. It's so nice, like with the push button hydraulics, to get to a campsite and literally just pull the pins and drop the house and like, all right, let's go fishing or do whatever camping or whatever we're doing. There's really no setup there. As far as getting your house ready for camping, and summer use, what are some things I should be looking for? Like, I know personally, I haven't used my awning yet. I haven't used my AC. Like, are there some things that I should prep, to get ready for my next camping trip?
Yeah. You definitely want to be running your awning in and out. Most people don't run that awning at all during the winter. Run it in and out, get it cleaned up, get the moisture out of there. Same with the AC unit, fire it up before your camping trip. Make sure everything's working correctly. Those are the biggest things. Some people run their fans on their ACs over the winter just to circulate air. You can clean those filters out. You can pop that lower unit off and pull those filters out, clean them up or blow them out. Make sure they're ready to go. But yeah, definitely run stuff. Make sure it's working before you leave. You don't want to ruin a trip over something simple.
Yeah, right on. One thing that I have left in my house, and this can, obviously cause issues with any house you had, any camper, anything. But, in our house, we have snacks, we have bread, we have treats for the kids. I try to get that cleaned out. You don't want to obviously leave that over the summer. Mice can get in there, different things can happen. But leaving food in there obviously is one thing. Another thing is bait. Bait pucks have been sort of it's funny because we're joking about it now, but it's like it comes up in my household like I wouldn't say every season, but almost every season, because you have me fishing, my son, we have buddies, we have lots of friends always fishing, and bait pucks are an important part of fishing. There's bait pucks all over my Yeti. They're in my bibs at home. They're all over. But we've had instances where a bait puck has, sort of reared its head in my fish house at a time where, I went out to the fish house. I had some of my daughter's friends staying over. It was after her grad party. And I was like, something just doesn't smell right in this fish house. And I sort of started tearing through things. Lo and behold, here's a bait puck that had kind of slid underneath some tackle trays that obviously had gone sideways. So it was sort of some anguish of me cleaning that out, getting it ready. My wife was in there. She knows all too well about bait pucks going sideways. But it can happen. And so that's one thing that I would say to listeners, that don't overlook just completely cleaning that thing out. Like what I do at the end of the season is when it gets nice, I get in there, like John said, I'll vacuum around the furnace and underneath the scissor couches. Cause I've literally not had bait pucks fall under there, but I've had minnow heads and different things sort of fall underneath there just from customers fishing, or Oreos or snacks that I don't want mice getting into. And so I'll literally just like vacuum the whole house out, take everything out of there, just make sure it's completely cleaned out. And And then, just sort of go through the process of cleaning, washing the outside completely, doing all that stuff, and then greasing everything, making sure my batteries are charged. Then everything's all done at once. And I know, I'm like a lot of other sportsmen where as soon as it gets nice, the last thing I want to do is like be doing a project like that. But I know in the long run, it's going to pay because I don't have to worry about, batteries being dead. I don't have to worry about rust. I don't have to worry about mice. I don't have to worry about bait pucks going sideways, all of that stuff to, just know that next time you use your house, it's going to be in tip top shape. Are there any other things that you can think of, John, where you're just like, or maybe you had customers run into where you're like, wow, I have never seen that before, but I definitely need to let people know that this can happen. Is there anything like that you can think of, or just what you'd want to add to the conversation as far as making sure that house is ready for the summer or summertime use?
Yeah, yeah. The interior is one of the big things I like to touch on too, because we do the same thing. You find your bait pucks, you find those minnow heads, and the best thing to do, like you said, Tony, open those cabinet doors, pull everything out, let that air get into those cabinet areas or drawers or cubbies. If you got your slider tops, open those up. If it's nice out during the day, open the windows, get that air exchanged inside there. Let everything just kind of air out, dry out from the winter seasons, and be ready for camping there. Another big one is, the appliance area. Your fridges, we opened ours up last week and we had frozen pizzas in there that thawed out, and we do this every year. So you definitely get it never fails. But yeah, get all that food out of the fridge, wipe the fridge down. If you have a locking fridge, use the lock to leave the doors cracked open a little bit and let that air get in there. Nothing's worse than, a musty fridge when you're getting ready to go camping. But same with your microwaves, your stoves. If you're using those over the winter months, clean them out, get them ready for the summer. And it same goes with, this type of year, people are anxious to get their water lines drained and get the antifreeze out of there. We're in Minnesota. We never know what the weather's going to do. I would say to be cautious this time of year. My rule of thumb is if there's no ice on the lake, I'll drain that antifreeze out, but it's not going to hurt anything being in there. But when you get to that point and you drain your lines, flush your lines, run some water through it. If your house is equipped with a water heater, definitely get that turned on, get that working. You're going to want it for camping season, and you want to make sure it is working correctly. And freshwater tanks as well. They've been, if you're not using any type of freshwater tank in the wintertime, you want to make sure you flush that out, fill it up, and just drain it. Do that a few times and get it cleaned out and ready. But fire up the water pumps and make sure, if you got any type of grinder pump in there for a bathroom, flush some toilets, run some water, run your kitchen drain pumps, and just get it ready. But winterizing it's a tricky one for this time of year. A lot of people want to head south camping, which is great. Just keep an eye on the weather back here when you get back.
Yeah, right on. I'm glad you brought up the pizzas because I was just thinking, I just went through my whole house and I unloaded everything. I never looked in the freezer. I looked in the fridge and I was like, nothing's in the fridge. Great. And so when we get done with this podcast, I'm going to go out there and check and make sure I don't have pizzas because I've done that same mistake. One year I left a lasagna in there. That thing went sideways in a hurry. I was more bummed because I forgot I bought the lasagna that we could have cooked out there. But
yes.
All good advice, John. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you jumping on the podcast. Anything else you can add as far as, just little things people can do? I know for me, like just doing it all at once and getting it all done at once is like just kind of how I operate. If I, like I said, the pizza thing, like if I don't go out and check that right now, That could be something that I'm like, oh man, I cleaned my whole house and then I forgot a couple pizzas. Anything else as far as, because you've been around Yetis, for a long period of time. Is there anything else that, people should be aware of? I know for me, my Yetis, knock on wood, I've never had like mice or rodents in there.
Yes.
I can't say the same thing for my campers. I just think they're sealed up so much better than like my old camper. But is there anything else you want to add before we cut to break?
I'm the same way as you are, Tony. I'd like to get it all done at one time, so I'm not missing anything. And we make a simple little checklist just as we're going through, just to make sure we're not missing anything. But after we get, the main parts done, we definitely like to check our hydraulic lines, our LP lines, the fittings on both. Make sure everything's tight. Make sure you don't got any cracks or nothing going on there. It just some good areas to hit that won't ruin a trip there.
Yeah, that's another thing is just cleaning underneath that LP cover.
Yes.
I've had that too, where I cleaned my whole house and forgot underneath the LP cover or the base of the LP, underneath the tanks. I kind of pull the tanks out now and rinse all of that salt and grime and stuff out of there. It's amazing to me how many different areas that salt and grime gets into. And, it's easy to put a house away and completely forget about it. And then you go to pull it off and, you've got either corrosion or something around your bases, your tanks, rust, whatever. To avoid all that, just kind of cleaning it properly. And it's a process, but in doing it, you're going to save yourself a ton of headaches. So, John, thanks again for being on the podcast, man. Hopefully we bump into you this summer. I truly appreciate it. Love my Yeti unit. I think, obviously I'm a huge Yeti guy through and through. So I truly appreciate you being on the podcast.
Yes. Thank you, Tony. And I appreciate everything you do for the brand. Get those pizzas out and go enjoy some camping here.
Right on. Hey, stay tuned. We're going to cut to a break. When I come back, we're going to close out the segment. I'll tell you another bait puck story as they come to my mind. My wife could probably do a whole podcast on bait pucks, but stay tuned. We got more Dialed In Angling after this. The cold months are rolling in, but that doesn't mean the adventure slows down. There's only one way to make the most of winter with the 2026 Ski-Doo lineup. Whether you're heading deep into your favorite fishing spots or carving your own path off the grid, Ski-Doo is built to take you there. And there's a reason Ski-Doo has been the best-selling snowmobile brand for more than 2 decades. Proven, reliable, world-class performance. Winter moves fast. If you want it, get it.
It's that time of year again, anglers. Winter is here, and L&M Fleet Supply is ready to make this your best season ever. Head into your favorite L&M Fleet Supply location across northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, or Michigan's UP, and browse the extensive collection of DeWalt tools and accessories, all guaranteed tough. Cut through the thickest ice with DeWalt's 20-volt drill. Brighten your setup with the assortment of 20-volt portable LED lights. And stay entertained with the DeWalt Bluetooth 20-volt speaker. It's weather-resistant, rugged, and ready for any adventure. Check out DeWalt's guaranteed tough deals and more at L&M Fleet Supply. Together, they're the perfect match for all your ice fishing needs.
Hey, Dialed In Angling fans. If you're looking for the greatest selection of ice fishing gear online, you're going to want to check out fishusa.com. They're America's tackle shop. They've got all the premier fishing brands under one roof. Check them out at fishusa.com. Okay, I'm going to put a final wrap on this week's podcast. I want to thank our guests for jumping on and talking about summarizing your equipment. I know it can be a big deal if you're a sportsman like me and, you're on to the next season. I know for me right now, my mindset's changing from ice fishing to boating to getting things ready on that side of things. And, like last fall, I got my boat ready. I got, batteries charged. I kind of winterized everything. The same thing can be said, obviously, for your snowmobiles, for your Yetis. So I want to thank Preston from Olson Power and Equipment for jumping on and letting us know everything that you can do to maintain your snowmobile. So next fall or next winter, you're not stuck with a machine that has all sorts of issues. You want to get out and get after it. Time is precious. Same can be said about John from Yeti. Thank you so much for all your input. John sees a lot of different things when it comes to Yeti owners and just people running into different issues. So thanks again, both those two, for jumping on. In addition to some of your big ticket items, there's some things that I've overlooked, just kind of, just being the ultimate sportsman and someone who likes to take advantage of every situation. I've talked a lot in these podcasts about, being able to ice fish and then open water fish. I can think of scenarios, not just with big equipment like my Yeti or my snowmobile where I've run into issues, but even just like putting away my float suit, for example, my Strike Master float suit, putting that away with some bait pucks in it, obviously some bait in there. I have run into issues in the past. I know my wife will attest to this, that, she's found in the basement a lingering odor, and come to find out it came from my bibs, and it was an absolute train wreck. Had to wash the bibs. Took forever to get that smell out of there. The bait pucks were ruined. So in addition to your big ticket items, don't overlook some of the small things like leaving bait in a bait puck. It could be something as simple as Eurolarva, but it's something as nasty as minnows. And so, I kind of go through the checklist as I get to this time of year. Not only putting the snowmobiles away, the Yetis away, the four-wheelers, everything. My bibs, even my Markham units, making sure everything's charged there. Anything that has a battery, I'm charging it up, putting it on the shelf, but I'm also maintaining those batteries throughout the summer. That's going to help, with the longevity of the batteries, much like you do in the winter for your summer items. I do the same thing in the summer for my winter items. And don't overlook the bait puck. That can be a sneaky thing that can cause, some real nastiness in your life, especially if you put your bibs away in a bin or something like that. Can completely destroy your clothing or any of that. So I know there's probably people laughing out there because they've done the same thing. I know many bait pucks that have been ruined as a result of leaving bait in there. And it's not just in my bibs that get put away. I've had bait pucks left in four-wheelers. I've had bait pucks left in tackle systems or buckets where I found them much later, some sort of lingering odor. So check all that stuff as you put it away. Same thing, rod cases, make sure there's no moisture. Moisture can be affecting a lot of your equipment as well. And get that stuff put away, and we'll be ready for spring, man. I am ready for spring, no doubt about that. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks again to my guest. As always, this has been the Dialed In Angling Podcast. Good luck fishing, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.